Ever since the early days of Half-Life 2's development, Eli's lab was an important location. However, as the game changed, so did the lab's setting. At different points in development, it was situated under an overturned ship, or in a man-made cave filled with hanging gardens and underground wells. One iteration more closely resembled a garage rather than a lab, and was filled with old cars and mechanics equipment. Eventually, Eli's lab found its home in the decommissioned hydroelectric power plant dubbed Black Mesa East.
I'll take you down to Eli right away. He would never forgive me if I kept you waiting.
Judith Mossman is actually a character born from the cut content of Half-Life 1. Although the voice on Half-Life 1's introductory train ride says Black Mesa is an equal opportunity employer, not a single female employee is seen in person throughout the entire game. Technical limitations at the time precluded the use of the textures needed to incorporate female scientists, which resulted in Black Mesa being inhabited entirely by males. In the concept stage, there was originally going to be a female scientist who would betray Gordon, telling him to wait in a room while she snuck off and called in guards who would attempt to capture the player. Another thing of note is the following elevator ride. While Alex's introductory elevator removed distractions, Judith's elevator adds distractions that are actually far more interesting than her dialogue. Little details like this nudge players toward liking Alex and having mixed feelings towards Mossman.
Feel free to look
The
around.
head preserved in this jar is the head of a monster cut from the game. It was a Combine janitor called the Cremator, which would clear the streets of dead soldiers and citizens' bodies after a skirmish. It was to do so using a hose that sprayed some sort of corrosive chemical. During this scene, if the player looks at this head, the newspaper clipboard, or the Vance family picture, Eli will respond, addressing whatever the player is looking at. This is one of the rare instances in the Half-Life series where the voiceless player is able to affect the dialogue in a more meaningful way than just pressing the use key. It shows that other characters are aware of your actions and that these actions are worth addressing.
Eli Vance is the Half-Life 2 counterpart of the Half-Life 1 scientist who opened an eye scanner door for the player, telling them to head for the surface right after the resonance cascade. This is evidenced by his dialogue here, the first time in Half-Life 2 where you meet him in person. During the game's complicated development, the character we now know as Eli Vance was originally two separate characters, Captain Vance and Eli Maxwell. Captain Vance was an undercover resistance member who worked for the Combine, running a facility referred to as the Air Exchange, who was also intended to be Alex's father. Eli Maxwell was a character not unlike the final version of Eli Vance. The only major differences are his relationship with Alex as a close friend rather than a father, and he had a very different appearance with a longer beard, glasses, and a cane. When the Air Exchange was cut, it took Captain Vance down with it. The two characters were then rolled into one, and the underground resistance fighter and military leader roles were given to Barney Calhoun and Odessa Cubbage, respectively. It has also been officially stated that Eli Vance lost his leg to a bull squid, a Half-Life 1 enemy that was also cut from the sequel during development. As an in-game explanation has never been provided, this is still considered to be true within the game's fiction.
Alex Vance was not a typical video game heroine at the time of Half-Life 2's release. However, this was not always the case. She originally wore a two-toned bodysuit with knee-high boots and belts with buckles. A few weeks before the E3 reveal, it was decided that she was not a unique character and that she needed to stand out from the crowd. Emergency meetings were held on weekends to try and make her fresh and different. Among the concepts that were considered were giving her glasses or braces and making her a mechanic. The final Alex we have today is a talented hacker, a fighter, and a persistent and determined individual with a kind heart who is willing to get dirty and make do in her fight for freedom.
Dr. Mossman may call it the zero-point energy field manipulator, but almost everyone else calls it the gravity gun. Valve has always made it a point to create the illusion that their worlds are tangible. This was part of the reason why Half-Life 1's crowbar visibly reacted when it struck against a wall, accompanied by the appropriate sounds and leaving a mark on the surface. The gravity gun was designed for the same purpose, allowing the player to use Source's physics system to their advantage. The gravity gun's claim to fame is its ability to pick up almost any small or medium-sized physics object and launch it into an enemy. The heavier the object, the more damage it will do. It allowed players to be creative and draw ammo or medkits to them while hiding behind cover, kill an enemy with a toilet, return a grenade to sender, or hold a radiator in front of them as a shield. Giving the player a tool like this opened up possibilities for many different types of mechanics, which heavily influenced the design and gameplay of Half-Life 2, with some of the most well-known showing up in the game's next chapter. Players' responses to the gravity gun over the years have been extremely positive, and as such it became a staple of the episodes that follow Half-Life 2, Episode 1 in particular.
Dog is a fan-favorite character,
call
and is
Dog.
one of the
He
few
loves
characters
to
that
play
have
fetch.
almost no major redesigns after his initial
Dog!
sketch, having essentially jumped straight from his concept art into a final in-game model with only a few recolors. He is based on classic sci-fi movie robots, like Robbie from Forbidden Planet. He is visibly made up of parts from various machines, most recognizable being the Combine City
doggy.
scanner camera that serves as his
Gordon,
face.
this is Dog.
His name suits him
My
well,
dad
as his
built him to protect
personality,
me when
his
I was a kid.
vocalizations, and his
First
relationship
model
with
was
Alex all
about
display
yay
very
high.
dog-like qualities.
I've been adding to
Playing
him ever
fetch with him
since.
is a very fun way to
Haven't
playfully
I,
teach
boy?
the gravity gun's mechanics, while
Okay,
establishing
Dog,
his
let's
character.
play catch with Gordon.
Ravenholm is heavily foreshadowed throughout the chapter Black Mesa East. From the moment the dark hallway is spotted, and Alex cryptically remarks that they don't go there anymore, players know exactly where they're headed when this chapter closes. However, Ravenholm was not always to be framed in this fashion. The player was originally to expect Ravenholm to be a sanctuary away from Combine control, only to find that it had gone awry in a most unpleasing way. This idea was obviously abandoned in favor of creating a building tension as the player approached the zombie-infested town.